That's why we have the girl talk. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, that's why dudes shouldn't talk, women should. They should be running our country. And here they are, doing Erika. Long speech about why men shouldn't talk.
I could continue that speech for a while.
Yeah, I could have listened for a while. So
No, I was saying I could continue the speech about why men shouldn't talk.
I could have listened to a man talk about why men shouldn't talk for a while. So, thank you all for coming so much. This is the Girl Talk. I'm Erika Wozniak.
I'm Sabella.
I'm a Chicago public school teacher, for those of you who don't know.
And I'm a deputy editor at DNA Info,
So,
Chicago's neighborhood news source.
yeah, DNA has been killing it this month. Especially with the CPS stuff. So I've been really impressed with you guys, so thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, it's not me, it's my amazing reporters. Some of them are here.
Good. So are you having a good month, Jen?
Yeah, you know, so this month has been, actually Lindsay wrote a story. She's actually doing her video and photography today, and she's amazing. Thank you, Lindsay. Yeah. You're a hero. She's doing a story for, it's going to run tomorrow, on how the negative news cycle is making all of us, like, crazy. Like, I feel like I need to take an Ambien every night to sleep because I just have, like, constant rage strokes. And I'm, like, just fight, like, this guy I blocked on Facebook, and I don't understand why I didn't just, like, unfriend him, but I, like, went to grammar school with him. And he just, like, writes pro-Trump things on everything I post. And I'm like, dude, what the fuck do you think's going to happen right here? Do you think I'm going to be like, yes, mansplainer, I suddenly support Donald Trump. Thank you. Thank you for educating me.
On Facebook.
Yeah, he's an idiot. But I get so mad, and I'm like, why am I even subjecting myself to this? But her story that's coming out is about how actually things aren't that bad. All of Make America Great Again. It's just the internet and being saturated with negativity all the time. So it's time for self-care, and
yeah,
we just need to love ourselves.
I yell at the news. I mean, I just straight up just scream at the news, and my husband comes in and says things like, watch a Real Housewife, for goodness sake, watch a Real Housewife.
The Great British Baking Show is the best therapy you can. It is emotionally healing. I highly recommend it. It's streaming on PBS. One season's on Netflix, but that's not nearly enough, so you should get on PBS and watch the most current season.
I've never watched it. I don't watch cooking shows, or else I would eat all of the things.
That's also helpful, eating all the things. Erika's also had an amazing month. She won a National Teaching Award. Started. We could listen to her speech. It's short. It's powerful.
Okay.
We're gonna listen to it real quick.
Okay. All right, guys. So what was really cool was that I got to meet Hillary Clinton, and I got to sit on stage with her. And for the first time last month, I know some of you were here, and I said I'm with him, which some people thought that meant that I was with Donald Trump. That was incorrect. Bernie Sanders. But after being able to see, I got to watch her read her speech, and the speech went out, teleprompter went out twice. And actually hearing her speak from the heart, now I'm with her. So I will be not angrily voting for Hillary Clinton. I will just be voting for Hillary Clinton. So.
For the Chicago Teachers Union, someone who is not afraid to go to the mat for colleagues and kids. Those are only a couple of the hats she wears. Erika is also a mentor teacher and a member of the licensure board for the State Board of Education. When the debate heats up about how to improve Chicago schools, Erika is at her toughest and her best, determined to keep the voices of teachers in that mix. Please welcome Erika Wozniak, our AFT Teachers Everyday Hero for 2016.
Thank you for this unbelievable honor. I wouldn't be here without my local, the mighty Chicago Teachers Union, and the unwavering support and encouragement of my parents and my husband, Brian. Across the country, we are faced with the crisis of our time, the deliberate dismantling of public education. I have taught in Chicago public schools for 13 years, and I am a product of Michigan's public schools. Privatizing our schools is hurting our children. Degrading the profession of teaching is hurting our children. Reducing learning to a long list of standardized test scores is hurting our children. What every child in this country needs, no matter the color of his skin or her parents' income, every child needs access to a great, well-resourced neighborhood public school filled with trained professionals like us.
Yes, Queen.
As our union flexes its considerable muscles in supporting candidates nationally, statewide, and locally, let's ensure that we work for candidates who share that vision. Let's demand that our candidates take bold positions against privatization, against overtesting, and in favor of transformational investment in the schools and students that need us the most. It is with great honor and humility that I accept this award. I've wanted to be a teacher my whole life because it's the best way I know to make the world a better place. As I look out at my colleagues in the audience, as I think about those whom I've had the privilege of knowing and working with, we are all heroes every day. We are the ones who give our students graham crackers when they're hungry. Let's use our power to elect people who share our vision of what public education can do for this country. Thank you. I don't know how many of you understand that graham cracker comment, but the convention took place in Minneapolis, and Philando Castile was he was a teacher in St. Paul, and he was known for giving his students graham crackers when they were hungry. So that was that small little comment there.
It was amazing.
Thank
Congratulations.
You. Thanks if you voted. And that was by far the most embarrassing thing that
I was like, you gotta show this speech. It's so good. Well, we have an amazing lineup tonight. We have two powerful, badass newsmakers. We're gonna start out, tonight with a woman you've probably heard a lot about. I know that there was a huge shame campaign from the Emanuel administration after the Lucas Museum took its lunch and went home, or what is it for saying? How is it?
They ran out of town.
Yeah, whatever.
Girl bye.
Yeah, girl bye, exactly. We'd love to introduce
Juanita Irizarry.
Yeah.
Hey, girl.
Hey. Thank you so much for being here. I know you're really busy and you're...
Let's actually calm down a little bit, thank goodness.
Good.
Glad to be with you.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm a Humboldt Park, Logan Square girl. People ask me, did you grow up in Logan Square? Did you grow up in Humboldt Park? Because DNA info just said Logan Square the other day. But I literally grew up right on the border, within 5 blocks of the 606 for the last 45 years. So on either side. So I am both a Humboldt Park and a Logan Square girl. And that has really defined who I am growing up in that community in the 70s and 80s, and during a time when actually the Westtown, Logan Square, and Humboldt Park were all very much impacted by arson fires during my growing up years, which I didn't know were arson fires at the time. I just thought it was normal for people to watch their friends' houses burned down, because it almost became like a party in the street, but it happened so often. And I learned many years later that that was because of redlining that happened in the neighborhood. As the Latino community moved in and banks decided not to invest in those neighborhoods, and so the owners who were fleeing, the incoming community basically paid up their fire insurance and then burned houses down. Like that's kind of what contributed to me being very interested in public policy issues around housing and land use, which is where I've spent most of my time, but I also happened to be raised by a weird mom who was doing organic gardening in Humboldt Park long before anyone thought it was sexy, and making us walk down the street and identify trees and go to Humboldt Park and net fish for crayfish and turtles and other things my mom would put in her big aquarium in the front room. So had a really weird growing up, and so that kind of connects to some of my friends at the Parks work. But I'm a girl from the hood who also just happened to grow up with parents who were teachers, got a lot of advantage in being well educated, and feel like much has been given to me and so much is required.
We were just talking about this before you came on, and I actually was talking about some commenters on DNA Info talking about their favorite tree. Do you have a favorite tree?
I love the ginkgo tree. I actually probably really love a palm tree more, but I don't get to see those around here very much. But locally, I like ginkgo trees.
See, I can't
even imagine what they are.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, they have
terrible.
this really weird shaped tree. They don't grow very big, so it's kind of nice, in a small space in the city. But I can point some out.
Thank you. And so you joined Friends of the Parks after you were with the governor's office. And it's odd because I feel like you go from being in politics to being the head of this parks group, but I feel like their politics probably got a lot harder with the parks group. Can you talk about that?
It was totally normal for me to go to Friends of the Parks because I had actually spent 15 years in the nonprofit world previously, and had run another nonprofit, once called Latinos United, now called Latino Policy Forum. And all of my nonprofit work had been kind of working outside the mainstream and pushing against the government and trying to hold it accountable. So to me, there was nothing at all weird about the Friends of the Park space other than that my work hadn't really been around environmental issues. I did spend a year in the governor's office and 5 years in philanthropy at the Chicago Community Trust, and that was, kind of a break and a deviation in some ways. But it was a great equipping, kind of to work inside the system a little bit and see how things work on that side. But the Friends of the Parks piece is, very consistent with my brand, which is usually fighting against the machine. So.
Yeah. So we'll just dive into the Lucas stuff real quick. Not real quick. But the Lucas Museum, when you joined Friends of the Parks, I believe this was already floating around.
It was, yeah. The lawsuit had been filed in November of 2014, so it had been already a ways into the process.
So when you joined, you were like, all right, bring it.
Yeah, I'm a serious glutton for punishment, and I needed a job, so a paycheck was nice, but I believed in the issue and really didn't have any qualms about taking on the city. Again, sucker, glutton for punishment.
So what was the actual issue that you guys were fighting? Because there's this narrative out there you're trying to save a parking lot. So explain that to me like I'm a fifth grader.
Right. Well, it's really easy to grow up in Chicago and not understand that there's been a 100-year battle over our lakefront, and there's a reason that it is largely, undeveloped right along the lakefront, and it's because there's this thing called the public trust doctrine, which says that all that land that was created by infill, so it used to actually be lake, and now it's land, that belongs to the citizens of Illinois, residents of Illinois. You don't have to be a citizen, resident of Illinois. And that the government doesn't just get to give it away or sell it even, that it has to be a serious weighing of public interest versus private benefit. And we argued successfully enough for the judge to say, yes, we should hear this case, that this was maybe out of balance in terms of the private benefit versus the public interest.
So the parking lot thing, that's something that I have heard again and again from people who, that actually one editor at DNA Info was like, fuck yeah, I tailgate there, and I'm gonna keep tailgating there. But he, like, so if, do you feel though that the parking lot is, what is the deal with that parking lot?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, while it's still a parking lot, there's a chance we can turn it into green space. Once we give somebody a lease for 297 years for a building there, it's never going to be green space, first of all. Second of all, the city has committed over and over again to turn that parking lot into green space, and they have reneged over and over again. So back in 1990, in order to get permission or public support to expand McCormick Place, then Mayor Daley made a deal with a bunch of advocates, we were part of that group, that a lot of that would be turned into green space and that parking spaces would be moved to the other side of Lakeshore Drive. And the city didn't do it. And then the next chance they had, they didn't do it. And they didn't do it. So they talk about us being the friends of the parking lots, but it's really been the city who, since 1941, has had parking lot there. And by the way, you know, like, who was in town this weekend? Coldplay, you know, where did people park for that thing going on in Soldier Field? In that parking lot. So when the city tries to make it sound like there's only 8 games a year that thing gets used, that's a bunch of baloney. And the city has been very happy to generate revenue from that parking lot. So that's the real story. We'd be happy to see it be green space, although I personally wouldn't mind it being a green event space where people can still tailgate, because I don't have anything against tailgating in particular. But it could be a green space that allows for that.
So there was a lot of nasty rhetoric when like most recently, before the whole thing.
That's because we were about to win, you know?
Right, right. One thing that that struck me was Father Flager's involvement, and I know he got a lot of pushback, and if anyone, I'm sure you guys know who Father Flager is, but he's a very outspoken Catholic priest from the South Side, anti-violence advocate, and he compared you to a gang member.
Yeah, he kind of lost it.
Yeah, which he got a lot of heat for, but what was your take when you heard that?
Yeah, I've tried to be very nice about him in public. Honestly, there's a lot about Father Flager that I have respected and I appreciate his work. I think on this particular issue, he lost it. But I think it's a real good example of how this process worked, which was that the Lucas family and the city made commitments and even doled out money to certain groups ahead of time so that they would be part of the apparatus saying, we want this, we want this, we want this. And so they had already gotten a couple $100,000 in donations to Father Flager's charity work, which is really important work, don't get me wrong, but he stood to continue to get more of that. Plus, you know, there were programs that they wanted to put in place, the workforce development programs for, you know, kids, you know, in this museum, which again, there's nothing wrong with that. But the idea that those workforce development opportunities couldn't be there if they built the Lucas Museum on the other side of Lakeshore Drive, you know, that was where we diverged in our understanding of what it was. But he was bought and paid for.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of that. Well, we were talking earlier today about several activists who have been like hired by the city recently, which is like they're kind of the old school activists. That's a separate issue. But what about the backlash? I know that there were a lot of people excited. I know I've heard people say like, yes, this is like against the machine. Like finally, like after so many years of like mayors pushing things through, the little guys won. Like the little guys came out on top here. But then there was the other half of it, which like angry. What I saw in my Facebook feed, angry Star Wars fans.
Yeah, it seemed like a lot of tantrums were happening. Like,
There's been a lot of tantrums. I think, you know, they've come from some different places. I mean, honestly, there are quite a few people on our Facebook page that when you look up who they are, everything on their page is Star Wars. And then there are those who called us elitists, who themselves are the elite, who threw tantrums when they didn't get their way. And there are people that just don't understand. You know, they don't know the policy issues. They don't understand the implications. But we have had eggs thrown at our door in our office. We've had the business interests of board members threatened. We've had board members, you know, at their workplace get calls saying, you know, we're gonna. And these are like businesses that the business has nothing to do with Friends of the Parks. They just happen to work there, yet they're getting these threats that people are gonna protest outside their office or whatever. So it has been a very challenging space.
So let me ask you this: are you a Star Trek fan?
I am not a Trekkie or a Star Wars person, but my husband does speak Yoda. And he is a big Star Wars fan. However, once he understood that there was going to be an awful lot of Norman Rockwell paintings in this museum, and it was a Star Wars museum, that helped him understand the issue differently. Not to mention, you can still have the same museum on the other side of the Drive.
Right, which is a big thing that, that no one really mentioned. What about the personally handling backlash? I know we talked before on the show about being trolled online, and a lot of if you're a woman and you are outspoken, you can count on some nastiness coming your way.
Yeah. Well, I did run for alderman in the 26th ward, and I will say that I figured if I was willing to do that, then I was willing to put myself in danger and to have potential backlash. And actually, my dad, who actually passed away during my aldermanic campaign, used to call me then regularly to ask if I had people like security and stuff. So I was really glad my dad was no longer with us during this, because it really was a lot worse in terms of, for the first time in my life, like actually taking a different route to go somewhere because I didn't want someone to follow me, or I've been wearing my hair straight on TV a lot, so then I was wearing it curly with my sunglasses when I would go certain places just to be less recognized. So it is a different level of stress, and actually still having some PTSD, I think, in terms of my body. Like I didn't know how much stress was built up. But again, I am that sucker who does things like, run against incumbent Michigan alderman in Chicago. So I wasn't up to the challenge.
We were actually asked about that too. You actually gave Alderman Maldonado a run for his money, and he kind of changed the way he did things, and I think everyone noticed that after the election. And I would think that the challenge had something to do with that. Do you plan to run again?
Well, right now I need a vacation before I think about anything. I do consider it a community service to let the aldermen wonder if I will run again. I did just buy a house, and it is still in 26th Ward, so certainly keeping that up. My board of directors does not want me to run.
You wouldn't be able to.
But they hired me full well, knowing that my big answer to that question was I don't know. So only time will tell.
Good. Well, thank you for running for alderman too. I think that's so important. We definitely need a different city council.
We gotta at least keep them scared if we can't be.
Yeah, more ladies on the council for sure.
And I see our second guest has just arrived. So we wanted to start again by showing a quick clip. Is that okay, Jessica?
Okay.
All right, perfect. So Jessica Diu, aka DJ FM Supreme.
You guys, this is so amazing. Jessica, I made a GIF. Did you see the GIF? So I made a GIF on Twitter today because Megyn Kelly's face in response to Jessica's comment is so good. I watched it on repeat 10 times. It was just the face. I've never. I guess I don't watch Fox News, but I've seen clips of Megyn Kelly before, and I've never seen her make this face before. It's pretty legendary.
And you can talk more about this, of course, after we watch it. But I think this gives us good.
First of all, what I've been hearing here, this is the reason why our young people are hopeless in America. Our young people are hopeless because you have all these adults here who are not listening to our young people. They talk about black on black crime in Chicago. I'm from Chicago. My organizing and activism has been on intra-community violence. We understand what she was talking about. We got the point. What I'm trying to say is here in London, we need to abolish the police. Period. Disarm the police. Community solution for transformative justice. What we are seeing with all these cases, what we are seeing, can we all agree that a loss of a life is tragic? Can we all agree on that? Can we all agree? I'm asking you. I've been peaceful since I've been here, but I needed to speak, right? And so we all can agree that the loss of a life is tragic. We all can agree that excessive force and extrajudicial judicial killings by law enforcement needs to be stopped. People, black, white...
Who's going to protect the community if we abolish the police?
We need to come up with community solutions. The police force in this country began as slave...
So we're gonna have Jessica. Can you come up and join us? I'm gonna grab my beer.
Hey, you see, what's up? This is the
Sorry.
Thank you for joining us. Jessica is a Black Lives Matter activist, and she went on in the firing squad of Fox News. So we'll dive right in. How did you get hooked up with that whole interview?
And are you okay?
First, actually, that's a great question. I actually want to say I'm a Chicago youth peace activist. That Fox News kind of framed me up as a Black Lives Matter activist. Even though it is Black Lives Matter, I use the hashtag support the movement. But for the past several years in Chicago, I've been working to build peace in our communities. And so the Friday before that segment was July 11th. That was a Monday. I got a call from another activist, Jamal Green. He was recently arrested, and they're trying to charge him for 5 felonies, for trumped-up charges for peacefully protesting in the states of Chicago. Jamal called me up and he asked me, was I coming to the protest that Saturday at the Taste? I was like, yeah, I'll be there, to support the young people. And he also asked me, he was like, your name just came up in a conversation. Would you be interested in doing Megyn Kelly's show with me and speaking about police solutions for violence, with the Dallas shootings and, Alton Sterling and Philando Castile, the 2 police executions that many of us witnessed on viral video. And I don't watch Fox, so I actually had no idea who or what Megyn Kelly is or whatever. So I did my homework and stuff, I looked her up on YouTube, like, okay, all right, she had a big spat with Donald Trump, all right, cool, all right, why not? Let's do it. Not really knowing what I was walking into. But I kind of did, because it's Fox News, and I know that, no matter what platform I'm on, I feel compelled to speak the truth, but I do like to elaborate on my statement. I wasn't able to fully express what I was trying to say. It was a very hostile environment. I felt like
it sounded like
the guy just doing this behind you.
Oh yeah, the entire it was a lot. Yeah, I really do. I could be wrong, but I do feel like there were paid actors on the show. It was probably one of the most unprofessional environments I've ever been in, having a civil conversation with paid professionals about serious issues in our communities, or in our country rather. And so I was led to believe by the middle of the filming that this was a joke, and it was either I'm going to sit here and look pretty, or I'm just going to walk off or say nothing. And I'm like, I didn't come all the way here to New York. You guys didn't flew me to New York in a big fancy, hotel in Times Square for 2 days. Like, I didn't just come all the way out here for nothing. And so I wanted to, state some points that, may have been a little bit more diplomatic, but hearing what I heard in the room, it was clear that we need to abolish the current structure of policing. And so what I should have said is that we need to abolish the police as it is today, what it is today.
And the thing is you looked like, I could see, I've been there, where you feel like you're completely, furious. Because you're surrounded by people saying crazy things, and you're like, oh my god, I'm so filled with rage right now, I cannot even. And also, the Black Lives Matter thing, I've been thinking about this lately, and, saying I'm not, I don't support Black Lives Matter is like saying I'm not a feminist. It's like, oh, so you're just an asshole. It's not a thing. It's like, if you don't support Black Lives Matter, you're an asshole. There's not a middle ground. And it's not anything to be objective about. It's like civil rights. Shut the fuck up.
Right. So the panelists on the Fox panel repeatedly stated that Black Lives Matters is like the modern day Black Panthers, which is not true. They said that Black Lives Matters is like the black version of the KKK, which is not true. So I was hearing a lot of just lies, really, and so I just was fed up with what I was hearing.
Is this one working now?
Oh,
Okay.
So I teach at Oriole Park School, and so most of the community where I teach is police. Escalante's kids go to my school, and they're good people. So what do you say to the folks who mean, what do you say to those folks? I mean, it's hard.
That's a great question. I actually have some really great friends who are police officers, who I love and respect. Some of my friends' parents are Chicago police officers. It's the system. It's the structure of policing. We need to bring to an end this current structure. I mean, it's been proven that there are racial, biases. A lot of people are killed for, Tamir Rice, 12 years old, playing with a toy gun in an open and carry state. He was playing with a toy gun while being black, right? And so I think that, it's like to say that like all cops are bad is to say that that's like saying that all white people are smart, or that like all black people are dumb. We just know that's just not true. That's just a broad generalization. So it's not about a good cop or a bad cop. It's about this structure, this system that supports these extrajudicial killings, that we're allowing our police officers to be the judge, the jury, and the executor. When these things happen, there is no accountability. We haven't seen any convictions. We haven't even seen any indictments. And so the young people, the activists, organizers across the country, it's fed up. It's like, do you think that people are literally shutting down expressways, putting their bodies and lives on the line just for fun? There's nothing fun about putting your life in danger. On one of the recent protests after the killings of Alton Sterling and Philando Castile, I joined some young people on Garfield, and I'm like, wait, they're about to take the expressway. Like literally, they're about to stop traffic on the expressway, and you have a peaceful protest or peaceful activist, and they all are peaceful and nonviolent. And when I organize rallies and things, I do like gatherings. I have a different style of my approach and how I organize. However, these young people want to express their rage, I got their back. And so as I was watching them take the expressway, shutting it down, I'm seeing the police cars coming. I'm like, this could be very dangerous. Somebody could either get hit, go to jail, be beat up by the police or whatever. It's like, well, am I going to come out here and stand on the sideline? Or am I going to get down there and do what I came to do, which is support our young people? And so, I made a decision. It was like, I'm about to go to the expressway. I don't know if I'm going to be hit by a car. I don't know if a police officer's going to arrest me. I've never been arrested yet. It's powerful. And so I just do think that, it's not, and it's a disservice to say that, all cops are bad or things like that. But we know that even that blue code of silence, the good cops who don't speak about what's happening with bad cops is you look at John Burge and Dante Servant and just different, and Jason Van Dyke, different cases where we are now seeing that CPD has had a lot of corruption. Lori Lightfoot, didn't she say that like pretty much there's a lot of racism within the organization?
Actually the feds investigated it and said so. Internally, who Rahm Emanuel appointed, they also said so. And also it's just like, thank you, Captain Obvious. Like, yes, this is happening. But like, the thing with the abolish the police movement, and I've been hearing this a lot because we cover at DNA Info, we cover a lot of protests. And I know Asada's Daughters has been a huge, they've been a big, supporter of, the abolish the police. But we did a story a few weeks ago, and actually my wife mentioned this to me. She's reading down, there's a really, thoughtful explanation for, solutions. It's not just somebody saying abolish the police. It's somebody saying, this is how we would make this work. And rarely... clearly the commenters did not read that far. And yes, they did not. But can you weigh in on this, on some of the ways that you abolish the current police system to make things better? Yeah.
Absolutely. So I also too want to start and say that, I didn't begin my activism path as a abolitionist, if you will. So it's actually, but no, I studied abroad last year in Singapore for 4 months, and while being away, I was watching a lot of what was happening in Chicago and across the country from the internet, and it was a lot. And I realized that the culture of our policing truly in the United States needs to be abolished, and that's where I first was like, wait a minute, I'm not sure if we actually need what we have right now, because what we have now works for the wealthy, it works for the rich. If you're from middle class America, when you have officer friendly who pulls you over and gives you a slap on the wrist, but where I'm from, that's not the case. Where I'm from, whether you are clean or dirty, you fear the police, right? And so what is this fear? And so after I saw the police officer, I forget what state he was in, but he was a security guard or officer who flipped over this 15-year-old black girl. She was in the classroom. He like body slammed her. It went viral, and I was like, oh my God, like why is he dealing with her like that? Because she was on her phone in school. And so, and then they end up like arresting the young woman who filmed it. It was just a lot of things. And so, what does community solutions look like? It looked like Assata's Daughters doing Running Man Day, holding community events. I think that if Chicago Police Department spends, the CPD takes up 40% of the city's budget, right? Chicago Police Department spends $4 million a day on policing. Well, but people are still dying. A young brother just got killed in my neighborhood 2 weeks ago. Things are still happening. Like, what actually is this money actually doing? So what if we were taking some of those, that $4 million a day? What if we were knocking down to $2 million a day and spending the other $2 million a day and reinvesting it into, youth programs, social services? A lot of our young people who are perpetrators as well as victims of intra-community violence are dealing with mental illness issues, have different things that have not been addressed. So when you have this systemic violence that's actually kind of sustained by the state, because the state, when you close the 50 schools and mental health clinics and the violence continue to rise, who is responsible? Well, yeah, the people, the community has to do things about it, but the community needs more support. You need more resources. You know what I mean? So different examples, like right now, Let Us Breathe Collective is in North Lawndale, and they're occupying Holman Square. They've reclaimed it and renamed it to Freedom Square. And the reason why they're out there is to push back against the ordinance, the Blue Lives Matters ordinance that's quickly being spread across this nation. I believe it was passed in Louisiana, which is basically saying it could be a hate crime to do things, from what I'm hearing, such as film a police officer or push back or resist arrest or whatever, a hate crime. So basically, they're pushing back at Holman Square, and so to me, again, they're feeding the people, they're organizing the young people in the community. That's another form of transformative solutions. I love Paige May from Assata's Daughters, and we talked recently, and it's like, when someone's in trouble, or if you need the help of the police comes after the fact. They're not actually preventing any crime or any violence from happening.
Yeah, I saw a meme actually in response. I was looking through, God help us all, but I was looking through the Twitter responses when Megyn Kelly shared your video, and there was a meme that was like, oh, you don't need the police? Fine, we'll come back in a week and you'll all be dead. Horrifying stuff. But yeah, it's exactly the point. I was just like, but wait, this is happening with or without the police. Today at 11 a.m. in Austin, there were 3 people shot, one killed, 13-year-old boy was shot. 11 a.m. on a Tuesday, this is happening. Anyone who drives through Austin knows there's squad cars parked everywhere. It's just that you can't expect. And also, what did you think about what the police chief in Dallas said? We've turned into this society that puts all of our social ills on the police department. They're supposed to fix our education system, our mental health system. They're supposed to be trained in all these things. What do you think of that? Do you agree with that?
Well, I just think that we need to demilitarize the police. I say that because, in Baton Rouge, in Ferguson, when these protests are getting as, out of hand as the police would like to say, they're throwing tear gas. Tear gas is a war crime. We don't even use tear gas on our enemies in war, yet we're using it on poor black and brown youth who are organizing and protesting and demonstrating. So, I don't know. What do I think about what the officer in Dallas said? The police, it is hard to be a police officer, truth be told. Honestly, I don't tell this to people, but the first thing I ever wanted to be was a cop. When I was 10 years old, I've been rapping since I was 10, but it was be a realistic, what's your realistic dream you want to be? I wanted to help people, and I would watch, X-Files and see Scully and Mulder. That was the first thing I wanted until I was 11 years old. I'm at my grandmother's house. I'm actually writing an open letter, and I'm kind of, not explaining anything, but kind of, letting people know what it is. But when I was a teenager, I wanted to be a police officer. This is going to be cool, blah, blah, blah. And I get 11, and my cousin is having some type of domestic dispute, and the police comes, and my mom, who's in my grandmother's house, and somehow the situation just escalates where the police is pepper spraying and macing my mother and my younger brother, and I just remember them screaming, and I remember my older brother ran, and I remember my cousin putting milk on his face, and I was like, why is he putting milk on his face? He's like, because he's burning from the pepper spray. And so, and I didn't even understand, like, why would, my mother had nothing to do with that. And so for that, I knew then that the culture of policing is way too violent. I don't want to be a part of it. And so, yeah, I'm not, this person who's just like anti-establishment. I'm not an anarchist. A lot of people are saying that, and I'm 27 years old. I've never been called a nigger, N-I-G-G-E-R, until this Fox show. I mean, different people like, what up, my nigga, whatever. But like, actually, like, white people telling me, oh, you stupid nigger this. I was like, if there's anything that I've learned from this experience, and I've learned a lot, is that how deeply racism still pervades this land in the United States of America.
And the horrifying, but we're talking with Juanita too about the horrifying things that people say to you, especially on the internet when they can be anonymous. How have you handled that?
Well, I have had a really, really great support system when it first happened. I actually had 3 friends with me at Fox Studios, so it's like, even though I felt frustrated, I felt so many ways when the taping was over. It was really crazy, but I had friends who were there to support me. And then when I came back to Chicago, I just started getting calls from, Black Lives Matter activists from across the country. Local activists here in Chicago started to reach out, and everyone was just like, we're proud of you. Thank you for speaking the truth. And I think too, for me to make such polarizing statements on the national, that wasn't my first time on national television. I've, spoken and performed on Melissa Harris Perry several times, and I've been on different, formats. But that was the first time that I was really frustrated by the content of the conversation, and I was very aware that this could really turn into an angry black woman moment and this be a stereotype. So I'm trying to balance this out, yet speak the truth. So it was a lot, and so after talking with my friends, building with my friends about it, I began to, and I remember my homie Keisha, who's here right now, one of the first people who had texted me, didn't even see the clip, and I was like, just came back into town. I was like, this Fox clip is crazy. What did you say? I'm like, well, I said about the police and this, that, and Keisha's in a Psych D program, about and was able to break down everything I said from a whole psychological perspective. It was like, that makes total sense without seeing the clip. I completely agree with you, and this is why, So I think that, and then also too, the bigotry, the hate that I received, which was thousands of hate mail and comments on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, my fan page, my email, just really weird emails that actually inspired and motivated me to create my new mixtape. Which and so this mixtape is called "This Is Not a Drill" Volume 1. And so basically, with this mixtape, it is very clear to me that Fox and its viewers do not want to understand what Black Lives Matter is, and that's fine, but there are a lot of people out there who, are not involved in the movement who say, hey, FM, I really like your passion, I really like what you do, but I don't really understand what you mean by, abolish the police. Like, then what, right? So what are ways to, what is different models of community policing? What does that look like? Obviously, we still would like for the state to help administer some type of program, but as a peace activist, how can we have peace officers? So on This Is Not a Drill mixtape, I go through each point that was made on the show, and I kind of teach, to the best of my ability, what Black Lives Matter is. From 2013, on July 13, 2013, I was with a group of 100 black activists and organizers from across the country. We were convened by Kathy Cohen of Black Youth Project, and that day, together, we witnessed the Zimmerman verdict. We didn't know the Zimmerman verdict would happen. For those who are not aware, the Zimmerman verdict was when, Trayvon Martin's murderer was acquitted of all charges, etc. And so from there, I thought movement, birthed through BYP 100, the Dream Defenders, Black Lives Matters, Million Hoodies, just different groups came out of nowhere. But a lot of people think that these are a bunch of disorganized and stupid youth. Some of these activists and organizers are Ivy League educated. These are not stupid young black people at all.
I think that is just a ridiculous, just if you look at the news, it's clear how organized and how brilliant in terms of just a pure PR stance and purely I'm in the media, And I see it. And for years, I worked at the Huffington Post before I joined DNA Info, and we would get all kinds of lefty, progressive, like, emails. Like, we're organizing this thing, and I would be like, yeah, we're not doing anything about that because no one's going to come. I mean, not to be a jerk, and it's not that we didn't support these causes, but it would be like 4 people standing in Daily Plaza, and I was like, no. Like, there's a lot of other things happening in the city. So, but since like the Black Lives Matter movement and all of the young black groups that organized in Chicago have been like just so incredibly, everything is like the coordination, and it's almost, I mean, the protest you talked about in Garfield Park when they shut down the expressway. I remember we had a reporter out there, and there was like a shadow group that like led the media somewhere else. And like led some of the police officers following it somewhere else, so then everyone else could go and block the expressway. It was completely like artful. Like, I was like, whoa. Unfortunately, our reporter that day like followed the other group, and, and we called and we're like, hey, are you seeing this? And he's like, oh shit.
So going back to like the hate comments on the internet, you've experienced them. Juanita, how do you deal with them, or how did you deal with them during this whole debacle?
Delete. Oh, no. You know, you just have to ignore it. You know, I mean, it's obviously people don't actually know you, so you have to disconnect it from yourself. We got a lot of phone calls as well in the office, both love and hate. But you just have to, like, disconnect yourself from that reality. You know, I'm also a person of faith, and so I look to my source in that way. But you just kind of like talk to the hand. You know, this is not about me as a person. This is their hate for this issue, but you just can't internalize it.
Yeah. Do you think that this is political climate is making it? Do you think that it's worse than it was, or do you think it's just like allowing the creatures to come out of the woodwork?
Well, honestly, I think that this political climate is the scariest I've ever lived in so far. That, I was born in '88, and so I believe Ronald Reagan was the president, or was it Nixon? I don't know, one of them. I don't know. It was a Republican president. I think it was Reagan. But overall, so like, but no, seriously, like even when I woke up, first of all, my spirit was very heavy after witnessing Alton Sterling's death. And then, I work at a school. And so some of my students were actually tagging me in the death of Philando Castile. And I woke up in the wee hours in the morning, on Instagram, you see your name tagged. So I'm like, well, what is this? And my students writing, well, FM Supreme can stop the violence because, I'm known as a peace act, etc. And I'm like, what is he talking about? And to see the clip and this man is bleeding in the car with a 4-year-old, I'm like, oh my God. The fact that my 9-year-old student is desensitized by this actual act, and it's like, I don't, talk to her. She can help, but it's like, no, I can't stop this if I want. I can't stop this. I want to, but this is beyond me. This is systemic. This is state-sanctioned violence. This is so much. And so, yeah, it was deep. I don't know, I lost my train of thought, but just to see that really just showed me, like, wow, like, my spirit was heavy, and then to see the Dallas officers be shot, oh my God, real weekend waking up like, this just can't be, this is getting worse and worse. But the first thing I thought of, they said, Dallas police officer shot by JFK in 1963. What's going on? Why are we seeing that he was assassinated in Dallas? I'm like, why? Like, that's so random. Like, even the Black Lives Matter activists in Dallas had a relationship with the police there. So, like, all these random things. And so, even with, how Fox is, framing up Black Lives Matter activists, the hate mail, the memes, it's scary because, and we're being framed as like this Black Panther Party movement, but we know what they did to the Black Panthers. They sent many of them to prison. They became political prisoners, and Assange Shakur is in exile right now in Cuba. So it's just like, we just want to live and be free. We just want equality and equity. We want justice. We're not trying to be no martyr. We want to live.
That was a caption on your video, which I noticed, and I kept trying to gif it, and I was so pissed off because I clearly knew that Fox News was trying to I know as somebody who posts stuff on the internet that people only read the headline or they'll only read the subhead, and underneath your video it said was Dallas shooter a martyr, or whatever it was, and I was like, are you for real? You weren't even saying anything about that, and that's what they put up online, and they had it up there forever. It was you guys weren't even talking about that, and they're like, let's just keep this like shocking, horrible thing up that no one is saying.
Well, I think that goes to your question about are things worse or are they just different, you know? And I mean, as a light-skinned Latina who doesn't have to deal with the realities, despite, you know, identifying very strongly with my Latina-ness, I get to walk down the street with the privilege of a white person. I think the racism that already was there has been unleashed, right? I don't know that it's new. People feel they have different permission to express it again. I was born in 1968, so I've seen a little bit more, but we talk about it online. You know, there's a 24-hour news cycle that even during my lifetime didn't exist, right? So how much this stuff is in our face and in our consciousness, and we have people's nasty comments and we respond to them and we share them and we just, you know, that is really different. You know, the racism may not be different. I don't know that I can judge that, but there's something different because of the media and the social media.
And there's definitely something to be said as women, the different kind of attacks that we endure. Because it's different than what a man endures. I mean, we get called much different, nastier names.
Many more rape threats.
So, yeah. So that's something to think about.
Do we have a few more minutes? Mr. I don't know.
I do was going to add a small note. I'm sorry I missed the first. I really wanted to hear the conversation. I think I was overseas when a lot of the stuff was happening with the negotiations. But when I even look at like situations, like it's bigger than like the people involved. You know what I mean? And so, you know, I don't know exactly what happened. Like I said, I wish I was here early for the conversation, but I do want to say that I think Melody Hobson's heart is in the right place. I think she does a lot of good for this city and the community. And I only say that because with After School Matters, I am a product of After School Matters. She's the chairwoman of ASM, and I, used to work in Chicago Ideas Week. And, they host many speakers, et cetera, and I remember standing in the hallway, and she walks through the door, and I'm like, that's Melody Hobson, and, most people around me didn't know who she was, and I'm like, I really look up to you, as a young black woman, you're amazing, et cetera, and we're talking, her chief of staff, gives me her card, et cetera, and I keep in touch, I follow up with them, and they asked me for my address, and Melody sends me a personal letter like, keep up the great work really hard, you can push yourself, you have the enthusiasm that's needed to succeed, etc. So, like, for me, those type, coming from where I'm from, it's important to have, people at the top like that reaching back and just to give you that encouragement. So, I don't know what the whole conversation is about, but I do know that, and I respect you guys for fighting for that lakefront, right? And it's like, well, why can't this, museum be placed back here? And I get, I get that. And so, so I just think that, I do think that Melody's heart was in the right place, and, whatever happened, but I wanted to say that.
Friends of the Parks has After School Matters funding.
Oh, word.
So we thank Melody Hobson for not taking our contract away.
Okay.
And that's another thing we didn't really get into, but why did it have to be right there? I mean, I can't see that being a Melody Hobson thing. It seems like more like, we're really mad because this was our original plan and we won't.
So I think there were a couple of things that happened. Number one, it was reported in the news, so this is not me making things up, that there was a phone call between the mayor and Melody Hobson after San Francisco told him to take a hike. And during that conversation, Melody Hobson, who was a significant contributor to Rahm Emanuel, was told that they could have the lakefront property for $1. So even if you don't care about the lakefront, one might want to ask if those kinds of deals are appropriate. And eventually it went up to $10 for 99 years. And then the mayor went on with a sham of a public participation process, which we have 18,000 pages of documents, and I tell you, they made up this public participation process. I mean, we were meant to think there was a true public participation process when the decision had indeed already been made based on certain phone calls. So regardless of what you feel about the lakefront or the Lucas Museum, there's a political process that Chicagoans should care about. I think there's a whole other aspect, which is that George Lucas is a movie maker who had a vision for having his museum on a spectacular site, whatever he deemed to be a spectacular site, and if he wasn't going to get his way, it wasn't going to happen. I think Melody Hobson truly loves Chicago, truly wanted this museum in Chicago, and it stayed as long as it did because Melody was trying really hard to get her husband to make it happen in Chicago, but I don't believe her husband cared one way or another whether it was in Chicago. Despite having sat with Melody and talked about our own mutual concerns for a community and why I, as a 47-year-old Puerto Rican woman, still live in Humboldt Park, that you really need to be careful talking about who's an elitist and who doesn't care about black and brown children. So if you really care that much about black and brown children, put the museum on the old Michael Reese Hospital site and keep it in Chicago.
And maybe sell the site for like $1 million so that I don't have 38 kids in my class next year. I mean,
That's right. And by the way, if you put it in Bronzeville, then like local businesses around there might actually get some business when you leave the museum to go to lunch, right? But if it's in a site that's isolated, then all the benefits accrue to the museum, right? So let's be real, all the jobs, all the economic benefits could have come to Chicago if it was placed on another site, period.
drop the mic. Just drop the mic. Thank you all so much for coming. I think we're totally out of time. We went a little bit over. So we should probably wrap it up. So
you guys, you're awesome. Thank you.
Thank you
And we're gonna play out with Jessica's song that she sent us, FM Supreme song. And as soon as you send us the link to your mixtape, whenever it's up, we'll put it up on our page and we'll send it to everyone who signs up. There's an email list over by the water pitchers to sign up, and we'll email you as soon as it's available. And we'll email you with the next Girl Talk lineup.
yes, and next month we have confirmed Amara Enya. She ran for mayor last cycle. And then in September we have the president of the Chicago Teachers Union, Karen G.J. Lewis. She will be with us.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you for doing what you do. You're